today. I would also like to say selamat siang kepada semua di Indonesia, sawadika dan sawadika to all in Thailand, maligayang pakdating to all in the Philippines, and finally, but definitely not the least, mingalaba to all in Myanmar. I hope that in our current situation all around the world, everyone is staying well and staying safe. Before I proceed further with the event, just a few house rules for our speakers today. Please kindly mute your microphone when others are speaking. Please kindly remain tuned in and with your video on. Please feel free to post any comments in the chat box, be it in Zoom or Facebook. And we will also have a quick break in between our two sessions to allow for the speakers and our audience to stretch, take a bathroom break, etc. Okay, first and foremost, let me express our deepest appreciation to our organizers, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Puja ASEAN and Zuna, and our media partners, The Vibe, Tempo, and Prachatai, for holding the Human Rights in ASEAN, the Cartoonists Perspective digital exhibition. Without them, we would all not be here today to witness this event, where 5 nations gather in solidarity to say in one voice, please fight against human rights injustices. The exhibition and our upcoming forum on 10th of July 2021 can be viewed via www.kraftora.com, www.thevibes.com, www.tempo.co, and www.prachatai.com. We will showcase a video montage of how you would be able to join us in the digital exhibition a little bit later on. Today, the whole world is actually waging a war against a virus that no one really saw coming and has turned everyone's life upside down. Our digital exhibition, instead of a physical one, is just one evidence of this war. COVID-19 has caused the world to take notice and take steps to ensure victory. However, there is another war that has been waged long before this virus ever came to be, and that is the war against human rights injustice in its many forms. Today, in this month-long exhibition, we hope to get the world to also take notice and take steps to ensure victory for the world against human rights injustices. Our 38 cartoonists from the 5 nations, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Myanmar, will be exhibiting this month long via www.kraftora.com, and they have exercised their humanity and their talent to give voice to the many forms of human rights injustices in their countries and around the world in 81 pieces of magnificent artwork. As such, it is my deepest honor to encourage all of you to join us in this month-long digital exhibition by viewing all the magnificent artworks and attending the upcoming forum by these awesome cartoonists. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker for this launch session, Mr. Edin Khoo, the founder of Pusaka, one of the region's leading cultural centers, and the executive editor at the news site of one of our media partners, The Vibes, overseeing the culture and lifestyle, news features, and the Southeast Asia desks. Under Pusaka, he has worked intimately with the Masters of Ritual and Traditional Arts, researching aspects of oral transmission, cultural and religious politics, and aspects of ritual in traditional theatre. He is also a regular contributor of comment, journalism, and literature to leading news and arts platforms around the world. With such a sterling profile, it is indeed an honor to welcome you to give our speech. Over to you, Mr. Edin.
Thank you very much, Ida, and a very good afternoon to everyone viewing, and especially to my friends who are with me as panelists today, Zuna and Moritz, and my very dear friend, Dr. Mazli. We are entering this exhibition, which goes on for 31 days, if I'm not mistaken, and embraces cartoonists, 38 cartoonists from 5 of our countries in Southeast Asia. And we speak, of course, at a time of great dread, I think, and there is a great need for all kinds of ways to perceive what is befallen us over the past few years. But it is good occasion also to take stock of very fundamental questions that we need to ask, not just about health statistics and the state of health institutions in our country and worldwide, but really ask very fundamental questions about the purpose of life itself. Pandemics, I think, draw you to a very philosophical view of the world, And one of my great concerns, of course, today is that while that is very much needed in this time of pandemic, a pandemic that we call the great leveler as it just raises everything to the ground, is whether we have those philosophical tools to essentially grapple with many of the existential questions that befall us. This might seem to some to be a curious way of beginning a discussion on human rights and the cartoonist and the role of the cartoonist in society. But I would like to think that actually it reaches to the very heart of what the cartoonist does, how he engages with human rights, which is really a question about human freedoms and about expression. It is also a very, very crucial aspect of how we deal with one of those very elemental things in all of life, which is the exercise and the assertion of power by authorities. I think what we need to take stock of, especially today when we hear news of things like the investigation of another cartoonist by the name of Amin Landak and the Freedom Fest organizers. We have Zuna here, who's a testament to how humor, satire can be sometimes seen to be very problematic for power. And in political analysis, I always hold on to the very strong belief that if you are hated, you still have a very strong political position. If you are loved, of course, you have a very strong political position, but nothing can undermine your political position like humor. If you are laughed at, then I think you can already kiss your political career goodbye. So I think this is one of the reasons why things like humor, satire, and the role of the political cartoonist becomes extremely, extremely important in our day and age. One of the things I think I need to address very formatively here is the question of the political cartoonist and where the political cartoonist rises from and emerges from. There has been in the past 30 to 40 years really an attempt as we draw up things like the idea of Asian values and somehow exclusive societies that wish to be isolated or insulated from movements around the world that call for freedom and for greater space for expression, to try and somehow create social characteristics that seem to be insulated or exclusive to this aspect of the fight for freedom. We have somehow seen that things like cartoons, films, aspects of the dramatic arts are seen to be very imported traditions, or traditions that don't actually innately belong to us, and so somehow don't fit into our social values and social norms. One of the very interesting things, of course, about cartoonists like Zuna is that he shares his current predicament with many people who actually represent our tradition. People, for example, who engage in the wayang kulit, the shadow play, who engage in things like the makyong, traditions that bear aspects of not just ritual, but also a questioning and a grappling with the notion of authority and power. Some of the very prominent aspects of shadow puppetry and ritual theater that is very much a part of the Malay bloodstream and Malay culture, not just social culture, but also political culture, is the aspect of the comedian or the comic. We do come up from a tradition of great satire, and this applies to all countries around the Southeast Asian region, where this pulse of ritual theater and community theater is hugely influential in determining worldviews and the way we respond to authority and power. What Zuna shares, of course, with the puppeteer, the shadow puppeteer, is the fact that they're all attempts to suppress him, and along with that, a tradition that, as I said, in satire, it is actually the most invective, and it's the most dangerous form of assault on power, because once people stop taking you seriously, then there's very little advancement you can make in terms of rhetoric, or in terms of an impression on the communities you are trying to command. So I think what needs to be we need to bear in mind as we begin to speak of the contemporary political cartoonist, the tradition of cartooning here in Malaysia and in the countries around the Southeast Asia. And we have seen these traditions actually bloom and really take root as a form of political, not just political statement, but also a form of political discourse in countries like Indonesia for decades and decades, in places like Thailand for decades and decades. And of course, they come from a tradition. I think that is one of the very important things that we need to bear. This is not against our values. This is not against our traditions. This is not against our culture. In fact, it comes very much from the wellspring of our ability to constantly distance ourselves from power through humor and through an assault on those on authority. It's there also in our literary classics, in the Malay literary classics. If you read things like the Sejarah Melayu, if you read things like the Epic of Hang Tuah, you find all forms of elements that are subversive, that are also full of satire, that are sardonic, ironic, and also very, very cynical sometimes in our power relationships. We tend to think ourselves, and this is a lot of this emerges in social science discourse today, that somehow we are highly feudal societies, and highly feudal societies are very obedient societies. That is not actually the case historically. And if you look into cultural history, there have been very clear indications of how people are able to draw and understand their proximity to power and authority. And one of the tools by which they've always used this is humor. We have just been referring to a book recently, a very, very famous anthropological study on power relations in Malaysia, written by the great anthropologist James Scott. And the book is actually called The Weapons of the Weak, absolutely marvelous title. And when you look at weapons, he talks about essentially a lot of a sense of poking fun and undermining political authority. That is a tradition that has continued. If you look back today at the great films of P. Ramlee, and somehow I always find the great films of P. Ramlee to be the comedy films, yeah, not the serious films. You will see that constantly there is this need to undermine, or to at least pull the rug out of those who take themselves just a little too seriously. In the world of cartoons itself, we have evolved from just mere political cartoons and cartoons that are published in magazines to whole forms of novels that are written or devised in drawn form. We look at Will Eisner, we look at people like Art Spiegelman, and we look at the cartoon essentially as a very formidable tool of political commentary and historical commentary in our world today. So my last words are to Zuna is, in particular, as we are talking about this aspect of freedom and the assault on our freedoms and the role the political cartoonist plays in it, is that essentially you come from a tradition that you can truly claim as your own. And all of this cartoonists, and over the past few months, I have been the editor, seeing these cartoons published on a weekly basis. And I'm really amazed at how much the contemporary cartoon can be dovetailed to the expression and the semangat or spirit and foundations upon which political humor has existed with us, has continued to exist with us, and will continue to exist with us. I'm not a big fan of social media, but one of the things I find very, very inventive in social media is how essentially funny so many Malaysians are. And I think that is something we need to take stock on. We have to take it also very seriously, because it's one of the very good ways of conflating that very difficult thing that we need to grapple with on a daily basis, that is power. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Adin. That was indeed very lightening for me and our audiences. As you touched a very soft spot for me when you talk about P. Ramlee movies. I've always loved them as a child, and as an adult, I get to see even more when we see his movies. And I've always been amazed at how he could touch to the very heart of issues, but still making it very light in order to smooth the effects it might have on certain people. So, he's definitely always one of our greats in the industry. So thank you very much, Mr. Adin, for sharing your insights with us. Okay, up next is another esteemed speaker, and we are indeed lucky to have such a respected personality in human rights with us today. Mr. Moritz Klein-Brockhoff studied business administration in the US and journalism in Germany. He began his career as a journalist at Deutsche Welle, DW, in 1998. Mr. Moritz, you'll clear me if I'm pronouncing some of the German words wrongly, yeah? In 2000, Mr. Moritz moved to Indonesia to be the Southeast Asia correspondent for German newspapers, Frankfurter Rundschau, Tagesspiegel, and Stuttgart Zeitung. I might be wrong. He joined the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom in 2009 as project director for Myanmar, Malaysia, and Cambodia, based in Bangkok. From 2012 to 2013, Mr. Moritz was head of the Asia Department and the Human Rights Department at the FNF head office in Postum. He later became project director of FNF Indonesia and Malaysia in 2013, before taking up the position of head of regional office in Bangkok in December 2018. Just a little interesting tidbit about Mr. Moritz that might not be known to everyone is that he also used to play basketball professionally for 10 years, with 38 international matches for Germany and a player in the successful European Championship in 1993 under his belt, before hanging up his basketball shoes to begin his journey as a journalist and human rights advocate. As such, you guys, please help me welcome Mr. Moritz Klein-Brockhoff to begin his speech. Over to you, Mr. Moritz.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Zuna, fellow panelists, cartoonists, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom to be associated with this important project and to be here with you today. I've been asked to introduce the foundation a little bit and explain why we come to be associated with projects that promote the protection of human rights. And at first sight, you might be curious, what is a German foundation doing in Southeast Asia? The Friedrich Naumann Foundation is funded by Germany's parliament, and we are associated with the Free Democrat Party, one of the parties in the German parliament. Most of our work is at home. We spend half of our funds in Germany. And basically what we do is provide political education at home and abroad. We believe that it is very, very important for citizens to know about democracy, to subscribe to democracy, and only then will they be able and willing to defend democracy when it matters. And democracy is never safe. Even in Germany, we've had horrible experience before establishing a democracy in 1945 and in 1949 when Germany was founded, modern Germany, I should say. But still today, we have elements in German society that are threatening the freedoms that are dear to us. Now, from a foreign policy perspective, it is the belief of the German government that democracies abroad make the best partners. They make the best partners politically, economically, but it's also important to share values that protect the fundamental freedoms of any individual. And we ventured out into the world, first to Tunisia in, I think, 1959. And we came to Asia in 1969, opening our first office in Jakarta, Indonesia. And we started working in Malaysia in 1972. So we'll be celebrating 50 years of FNF Malaysia next year. And today we also have offices, as you mentioned, in Bangkok, but also in Yangon, in Hanoi, in Manila, East Asia. We're in Taipei and in Seoul. And then we have offices in South Asia as well, in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Now, in ASEAN, we have a number of partners working on human rights. The foundation itself doesn't really do anything. What we do is we look for people who share the values and who work on human rights, which is what we're talking about here today. In Malaysia, for example, we were a partner of Malaysia Kini from day one. Freedom of expression, it's very, very important, and very, very dim times back then in Malaysia. Also, Sisters in Islam, a partner of the foundation for more than 20 years working on women's rights. Today, we also work with ideas on economic freedom, and in other countries, we have other human rights partners. I won't go through them, but allow me to introduce one regional partner we have, which is the Regional Working Group for an ASEAN Human Rights Mechanism. They have a secretariat in the Ateneo Human Rights Center in Manila, and it's a group of esteemed human rights activists, and they dream of stronger human rights institutions in ASEAN. Now, we do have an ASEAN Human Rights Charter. We have an ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, but as we all know, they're far from perfect. The terms of reference for the Commission makes it an organization that is not potent, that is not proactive, and that is, to date, I must say, not successful. So the Regional Working Group is trying to influence governments to take a stronger stand institutionally on human rights. And the long-term goal and the dream the Regional Working Group has is an ASEAN Human Rights Court. Now, that may seem far-fetched today, but I hope we'll see the day when the institutions are stronger and when ASEAN has a human rights court. Another topic that we are venturing out to is the issue of business and human rights. This goes to condition of workers. This is also of interest to German companies who manufacture products abroad. And it was 10 years ago that the United Nations drafted the guiding principles on business and human rights. And this year we do want to have a look at what has happened in ASEAN during those 10 years. Theoretically, governments were supposed to draft national action plans on business and human rights. And to the best of my knowledge, it's only Thailand so far who has done so. And we want to take stock in the publication of what has happened and what has not happened. And then aiming to have a conference here in Bangkok in December, Corona permitting. We'll have to see how that goes. Now, my foundation is the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. And many of the freedoms that are important and dear to all of us are addressed in the cartoons of this exhibition. We're talking about freedom of expression in general, the freedom to publish such cartoons, which is not a given in many of the ASEAN countries, but many other freedoms, the freedom of assembly, and of course, the freedom from harm, the freedom from prosecution, and then also everyday matters like abuse. Some cartoons also address environmental issues. So if you go through all the cartoons, and more than 80, you'll see that there is a wide range of issues addressed that are all very, very important, not only here in ASEAN, but globally. Now, how did we get to cartoons? This is actually is Zuna. It's in 2016 that the German embassy in Kuala Lumpur approached us and asked us whether we could organize a trip for Zuna to Berlin. And at that time, I don't have to tell you, Zuna was under great pressure, having been arrested, charged, and he still had a passport, but we feared for him to be put away. And it was important to highlight the situation that he's in. So Zuna and I flew to Berlin, and he met the Commissioner for Human Rights of the German government, who then tweeted and raised the issue. We also had a public event with the Berlin chapter of Reporters Without Borders, where Zuna spoke, and he met other German fellow cartoonists, which was a lively exchange. Zuna and I have stayed in touch since then. And when this idea of a cartoon exhibition on human rights in ASEAN came up, I was excited right away. And I said, okay, Friedrich Naumann Foundation is on board. Let's do it. It was a lot of work. And let me close by thanking those who did a lot of work. First and foremost, Zuna and his team, but of course the cartoonists who dedicated their time and energy to provide these great artworks. Allow me to also thank my staff who worked hard, particularly Jose and Vera, who did a lot of work to make this happen. And I'll close by saying, again, how thrilled the Friedrich Naumann Foundation and myself personally, how thrilled we are to be associated with this great exhibition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was indeed good to hear your words and insights into the issue of human rights around the world. And thank you from us as well to your team and to yourself for FNF being part of this momentous occasion. So once again, everyone, you are currently joining us on the launch for the Human Rights in ASEAN, the Cartoonists Perspective digital exhibition, which is organized by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Puja ASEAN and Zuna, and our media partners, The Vibe, Tempo, and Prachatai. The digital exhibition will be on from 1st July to 31st July 2021. So do please join us via www.craftora.com, www.thevibes.com, www.tempo.co, and www.prachatai.com. So again, we will have another forum coming up in association with this digital exhibition, which will be on 10th of July 2021. So keep tuned to our www.craftora.com for more information as we go along the week. Now, I am always amazed by our next speaker, and it has always been my honor to introduce our program director for this event, Mr. Zuna. Mr. Zulkifli Anwar Al-Haq Zuna, as he is more known, is a political cartoonist from Malaysia. His philosophy has always been that how can he be neutral when even his pen has a stand? He has also received many accolades, like the Courage in Editorial Cartooning Award 2011 by Cartoonists Right Network International, the Cartooning for Peace Award 2016 Geneva, which was presented to him by Mr. Kofi Annan, and also the Human Rights Watch Helman Hammett Award for 2011 and 2015, and the International Press Freedom Award, Committee to Protect Journalists, New York 2015. So how can we not be proud to introduce this gentleman? As such, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome Zuna to give his speech. Zuna, over to you.
Thank you, Raja Ida. And thank you all my fellow panelists, Dr. Mazli, Mr. Edin Koo, and also Mr. Maurice. Thank you for joining us today for to make this program as cheerful as ever. And I would like also thank you to all the cartoonists who take part in this exhibition, which is very, very important. So all the 38 cartoonists from 5 countries, and this is your commitment actually to come up with a very hard-hitting cartoon and try to try to tune it into the theme of this exhibition, which is human rights, which is something that is very, very considered very risky and dangerous in Asia, especially in ASEAN country. I also like to thank you all my staff. Yeah, I start with thank you first, my team, Craftora teams, who work hard to make sure these events becomes a reality. The program manager is Azura, and then a curator for this event is Hailey, and the webmasters, those who are responsible to create the digital gallery, Mr. Shah, Ida as the Raja Ida here as moderator, and the other one is Jonas. I would like to welcome all to this exhibition, which is Human Rights in ASEAN, the cartoonist perspective. So cartoonists may have a different perspective, and this is, like I mentioned, is a work by 38 cartoonists from 5 countries. The countries are Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Myanmar, and we have 81 hard-hitting yet funny cartoons exhibited at craftora.com from from 1st July to 31st July. And Craftora is actually a digital art gallery which was formed last year. So far we already have this is our 3rd exhibition. Yeah. So how to describe a digital gallery? Actually, it's like a gallery. It's like a physical gallery. You have a front door. If you go to craftora.com, you go to front door. You will see the menu. You see the list of cartoonists, and then you can click there. You can go to their own wall and see their works. So we try to copy as much as we can. Because we know that during pandemic now, which is still, the future is still uncertain. So we think that the best is to create an online or digital art gallery. And this craftora.com art gallery is not only it's also open to those who want to exhibit their exhibition. We are open to it, and you can come to talk of us. Of course, there are some fees need to be paid, but again, we have all the structures to accommodate that. Yeah, thank you very much. I will today I will a bit because I think the topic of a political cartoonist, I would like to share my story. Because why I share this is, even though it's my story, it's not about myself alone. I think this is also can be shared or can be feel by so many political cartoonists, not only those who take part in this exhibition, but also those who being a political cartoonist all over the world. All the challenge, the intimidation, the harassment, I will share today because I think this is important. Also for the youngsters, for those who want to be a political cartoonist, let's look at my experience, and I would like to share to you all. Yeah. First of all, I will invite Azura to help me to share screen. I will have some presentation. Please listen to my cue, not yet. Yeah, okay. My cartoon, this is my first cartoon about corruption. You see, corruption, this is not only in Malaysia, the title is in Malaysia, but I think it's all over the world. Last time it was under table, then later on it's developed to above table, and now including the table. People take it. So this is how bad the corruption in our world nowadays. So I'm as a cartoonist, I think that no, we cannot simply say simply keep quiet, not doing anything. We have to stand up and make this issue as an important issue in our cartoon. So that's what I do. And my topics mostly, in my cartoon, I focus on corruption and injustices, which is, I think, it's very, very important when managing a country. And so I really come out to be I think how we going to take part for the cartoonists and also for others. the problem we are facing in the world now because we are silent. People really doesn't bother about anything, and when it comes to corruption, they say, oh, this is political issue. I'm not interested in politics. Done. So not doing anything. So because of that, so the corruption has become bigger and bigger, and the government become more power. They got more power from the people. That's why I come out with a slogan to tell the people and to keep telling myself how important to make a stand. Next. Azura, okay. The slogan is, how can I be neutral? Even my pen has a stand. So we cannot be neutral. We have to really stand up and make our voice clear. And this must be seen in our work as a cartoonist. You can, it must be clearly seen. So that's why I come up with this philosophy. There's how I want to explain a bit how important we have this philosophy. Some people say may not agree. I'm okay with that, but how important we have this philosophy when our country, our society is having a moral crisis. You see, when as example, I give a very simple example. If I stand at the bus stop and beside me a lady with a handbag, and then come a snatcher and snatch the bag in front of you, will you say, oh, I'm not this side, I'm not this side, I'm neutral? No, you cannot do that. You have the ladies, and when you have the lady, you have to, the risk is always there, but you need to do that. You really need to do that. So same take this example to how we manage a country. If we keep quiet and the government will say, look, yeah, so this is good, it's good signal for the government to keep doing what they think is right, to keep corrupting our money. So this is how it's important. And then I come up with more cartoons about corruption. Next, yeah. Okay, this is one of this is example. Okay, next. I don't want to go through about deep about this cartoon. Okay, this is also some example of corruption. And next, yeah, this is also cartoons about against about corruption and power. And next, yes, this is also that some of you may familiar about the YMDB cases, and because of this stand, so of course, like I mentioned earlier, we need to take a risk, so we have to start to face. So this is how it started, and yeah, next, you can see. So the government start to ban my books. This is under Printing and Presses Act. First, this is 6 books, and then next, this is also Supplement Man of Steel also banned, and about 12 of my book has been banned by the government. And not only that, the police, the authority, the police, the KDN officer also went to the printer's office, printer's factory, those who print my books, and give a very clear, a clear warning to them that if they print my book in the future, their factory license will be revoked. So 3 printers have been raided, and also the bookstores around Malaysia, also the same threat, and also my office has been raided several times, and the police took the books, confiscate my drawings, all type of harassment they did to me. And at this point, then we will have this, and at this point, I think many cartoonists will come to this junction that the people, like what my experience, then people start to come and advise me. Advice like, please, no need to go too hard. Please slow down a bit. So you still can sell your book, you still can do normal cartoon. yes, political is okay, but don't go to the most powerful one. So this is important for us to understand, and it will come to your mind, because the risk, the next risk will be maybe you go to jail. So you stop at this junction. And yes, many, including famous cartoonists, senior cartoonists, spoke to me about that, about you need to think twice. Why don't you just do normal cartoon? But I told them, look, I can't, I'm not, I don't want to do a normal cartoon. I don't want to do an impactful cartoon, the cartoon that can give an impact to the society. So I told them this word, yeah, which is next, please. Why pinch when you can punch? Yeah? Why you pinch if you can punch? So I said, look, I want to punch. You can still pinch. I want to punch. So because I think this by doing this style, this is you know, it give more impact from my own experience. And then after that, next, I got arrested. Next, arrested again, and next, arrested. Yeah, this is a few of the example. I had 7 times arrested by the police. Then no, not yet. Arrested by the police, and then yes, again, you know, during this time, people will come with advice again, and they will come to your mind. So for those cartoonists outside there, you have to think carefully whether you want to stop. Some may say, this is enough, I want to stop. This is enough. I don't want to spend in the lockup with all the criminal. I'm a cartoonist, I'm not criminal. But this is what the government want you to stop. So I said, look, I don't want to stop. I want to continue. Okay, so I continue, and next, so I was and after that I got travel ban. This is after I visit Germany, yeah, Berlin. So Mr. Morris' fault is this, and not exactly the time is after that, but the exact reason why is because of next slide, please. Because of my exhibition in Geneva. This is exhibition in Geneva, which is officiated by the late Kofi Annan. So the government was very angry about this exhibition, and I got a travel ban. And then next slide. Then after that, I got 9 charges of sedition, which is, if you count properly, is mathematically it's going to be 43 years in jail. It's mathematically, yeah. So then and this is again, you know, this is keep coming to your mind. Why you want to continue? People still ask this question. Do you have fear? Why you want to continue? It's not enough jail for you. No, people will ask that question. But again, you know, this is the mission. And toward the end, I will tell why I continue with this mission. And this, I want to, all the youngsters, all the young artists, all the cartoonists, please listen to this, because this is very important. Okay, next. So this is the situation now. So now I got so many, you know, the travel ban, seditious, all already there. And while at this point, next please, the government used 6 laws against one cartoonist. So this is all the laws here. I mean, I have to face this. And then again, yeah, come to the question again. Should I continue? And people keep asking this question. Do you have fear? You don't have fear? No, I have fear. I'm human. We are all, everybody have fear, because we are human, we have heart. But again, then why you still want to continue? And why you still want to draw cartoon? You know that the moment you draw, the moment you have exhibition, the police will come. 50% chances of police will come is very, very clear. this is where, you know, it is, I would like to point out very important philosophy of cartooning. This is where I'm talking about philosophy of cartooning. You know, I'm born with cartooning talent. So this talent actually it's not mine. I don't go to university to learn how to be talented person. No, there's no course like that. So I have so it's come with me. So it's a gift. You know? So it is where we really need to understand this philosophy that it means that talent is not a gift, but talent is a responsibility. Next please. Yes, talent is not a gift, but talent is actually a responsibility. So what is responsibility? Responsibility is something that we really need to carry on until the end of our life. It's not a job. You know, I'm drawing cartoon now. It's not a job anymore. You know, those days, 20 years back, yes, it's a job. Now it's not a job, but it's a duty that I need to carry on. And it's a very big burden of responsibility as a cartoonist. And that's why I want to. That's why I continue. That's why people say, do you have fear? Yes, I have fear, but responsibility is bigger than fear. So this is important, yeah, to make up this point that even though we have all this, all the challenge, all the risks, but you really need to carry out your responsibility no matter what. So next, so this is again, I told in one of the investigation, I told the police that you can ban my books, you can ban my publication, you can ban my cartoon, but you cannot ban my mind. I will keep drawing until the last drop of my ink. So we really need to continue, and this is actually for the people. And when I can achieve my mission, I don't know. Not for me to answer that. Maybe not in my lifetime, but this is for future generation. We have to have this. We have to have this really great mission in our heart that is a gift for next generation. So when we continue, actually, next slide. When we continue, actually, there are some good point. You know, there are some negative here. There are there are four time arrested. Actually, 7. This is during the early day. 9 charger, travel ban, book ban, office reader, printer reader. But here, at least some people, people give you some recognition because of your work. But for me, I'm really it's not the award that value so much. Of course, thank you for those who give me an award as encouragement. But the value is when people come. I will end up with this word. When people come to you and say, sometimes I cry because of this. People come to you and say, thank you very much for your cartoon. Because of your cartoon, now I understand what happened in Malaysia very well. So I think this is so important for us to do cartoon for the public, so it's not ourselves, and to face all type of harassment. And you are very satisfied as an artist. I'm very satisfied if I can carry out my duty, and people really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zuna. Coming from myself, it's always good to actually hear your experiences and your history, because it keeps me humble in what I do daily as a human being and as a professional in the world. So thank you so much, Zuna, for your sharing. Okay, our next speaker is definitely somebody that I think everyone is looking forward to. Our keynote speaker for this launching event actually hardly needs any introduction in my mind, as he is a well-known figure, not just in the Malaysian political arena, but also in our educational arena. Dr. Mazli Malik is the former Minister of Education Malaysia and the Member of Parliament for Simpang Renggam. During his tenure, Dr. Mazli introduced student-oriented system to primary schools to replace a formerly exam-oriented structure. Dr. Mazli, where were you when I was in primary school? I was suffering. I was one of those students who did not do well in examination environments. So I never used to do really well. But in the classroom, you can ask me anything and I'll be one of your best. He also made reforms to mitigate teachers' clerical burden, empowered technical and vocational education on the tertiary level, and amended restrictive law, which had previously suppressed students' freedom of speech in universities and colleges. His time in academia did not encase him in the proverbial academic ivory tower, and this was exemplified through his commitment to helping students remain globally competitive in an era of vast technological changes and globalization. Recognizing that vocational education is essential in transforming Malaysia from a nation of consumers to a nation of producers, he formed a National Steering Committee to expand TVET collaborations with industry stakeholders alongside increasing access to polytechnics and community colleges. He has this belief that nobody should be left behind and that every child deserves an equal opportunity in education. To that end, he has pioneered efforts to improve the access and quality of education for marginalized and disadvantaged communities. He has increased access for nearly 5,000 students from low-income communities in fully sponsored state boarding schools and is working towards providing free meals to disadvantaged students nationwide. He has introduced the zero reject policy, which ensures that stateless children have access to the national schooling system. As such, Dr. Mazli is the most appropriate person, I think, to talk about education and perhaps where cartooning comes into place. Without further ado, it is my extreme honor to welcome Dr. Mazli Malik to give his keynote speech and officially launch our Human Rights in ASEAN, the Cartoonists Perspective digital exhibition. Over to you, Dr. Mazli.
Thank you, Rajida. Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Guten Tag to our friends, Maurice, honorable speakers, Zuna, Edin, Herr Maurice, and my fellow cartoonists and respected audience. Before I move further with my supposedly boring opening, let me share with you a poem written by Madhu Raghavendra, a poet from India who's also a creator and a social activist. He got became very popular after he wrote a poem that I'm going to recite afterwards called The Artist, which was a response to the Sunday Times survey by Straits Times Singapore on the 14th of June last year that graded artists as non-essential. So as a response, artists from all over the world started sharing the poem that he called The Artist in a week. Artists from Singapore, Sri Lanka, arts teachers from USA, a musician from Australia, artists from Philippines, painters from Canada, including those from the UK and India, begin to share this on their social media platform. Okay, The Artist. I don't mind being the non-essential. Even a child takes its mother for granted. It does not run back to its mother until it's hurt. Nobody first think of water when they arrive at an exquisite dinner part until they are choking. I don't mind being the non-essential, knowing you will come looking when things are broken and nothing else works. Art is non-essential until it is not. Madhu Raghavendra. A cartoonist too is an artist. They convey people's voices, human consciousness, and humanity's plight through their caricatures and sketches. As Raghavendra put it in his poem, art is non-essential. Art is non-essential until it is not, which means it is indeed essential. This is why in Indonesia, arts and culture are under the Ministry of Education. For them, arts and culture are part of education itself. Apart from Indonesia, Germany. Germany too has its Minister of Education, Culture, and Science together. So not only culture and education, but also science come together under the same roof. There, from the moment a child enters the school, they are being educated not only about education, but also culture, similar to Indonesia. We can see the result now as Indonesians is a nation rich with culture, and the preservation of their culture is enviable. I still remember when I visited an Islamic university in Jakarta called Universitas Buya Hamka. We were presented by art performances from dancing to singing, drama, and others. By the final year, religious studies graduates, you just couldn't imagine that would happen in Malaysia. If I may recall, Iceland and Hungary are two other countries that combine education and arts together. Furthermore, in Singapore, what I've been told by a few of our friends there, that in Singapore, schools over there have DK Barat clubs and wayang kulit. Edin, that's part of your passion, as part of their co-curriculum activities. Some cultural teachers and artists and experts whom I met and talked to, they told me that they were giving wayang kulit lessons in their schools, unlike Malaysia, surprisingly. Unfortunately, in Malaysia, when I stepped into my office in the Ministry of Education then, in June 2018, and I was gobsmacked to find that arts and music were only given one session in a week together, both arts and music, which means both are being taught in the same session for only half an hour a week. Not to mention about other things related to culture, they were not even being considered as priorities to be learned at schools, what more during their tertiary levels. I then had to issue a circular asking for music and arts classes to be taught separately, half an hour for arts and another half an hour for culture, for music and culture. Minister of Education during my tenure too has encouraged the introduction of civic education in which human rights, democracy, environmental awareness, and others will be taught across the curriculum, co-curriculum and extra-curriculum. I still remember somewhere in 2019, we had a collaboration with one arts and cultural NGO called Cendana, in which we asked them to bring artists and culturalists into our schools to expose and train our kids to arts and cultural performances. Then we managed to bring artists from different genres to schools. I strongly adhere that arts, culture, and values form the core principles of the Malaysian education system. That should be the case at the first place, since the national philosophy of education, or falsafah pendidikan kebangsaan, aspires to develop holistic individuals who are intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically balanced. These individuals, in turn, will be able to contribute to the harmony and betterment of themselves, their family, society, and the nation at large. However, our attempt to bring more arts and culture and values, which includes the awareness of human rights, had been hijacked with the change of government since March 2020. Until this moment, to be honest, we have heard nothing about any attempt to continue all those efforts that we have started with regards to arts and culture. Despite that, in looking into the role of artists, cartoonists, and arts, I would like to bring our attention to a great German thinker from Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, Theodor Adorno, whose works I truly admire. A sociologist like Edin, philosopher, and a composer, Adorno provides us with some thinking tools that are relevant here. Indeed, as ASEAN nations, we should have in our mind that our diversity is our strength, that our richness emerges from the intersection of our culture, heritage, and shared history. This diversity should teach us to have more compassion towards humanity and to live with a continuous spirit of mutual respect among each other, in which the respect of human rights should be part of it. In a set of radio interviews with Helmut Becker, Adorno stressed that true education is one that brings us towards maturity and responsibility, exactly what you said, Zuna, just now. The concept of maturity and responsibility are, to Adorno, the linchpins of any progressive educational system. He puts persuasively the demand for maturity and responsibility, which in German he called Mündigkeit. I'm not sure whether the pronunciation is correct. Mündigkeit seems to be entirely natural in a democracy. I repeat it again. Adorno said, the demand for maturity and responsibility or Mundigkeit seems to be entirely natural in a democracy. The sense of maturity and responsibility is very crucial for one to really appreciate the essence of human rights and to respect the rights of others. We must prepare then our children to be mature, responsible, and cosmopolitan citizens. We must provide them with the intellectual toolboxes to appreciate racial, religious, ideological, social, economic, cultural, and linguistic diversity, as well as human rights and humanity. Such an approach is especially important for us, bearing in mind Jürgen Habermas' potent point that individuals today increasingly have complex and multi-layered identities corresponding to the globalization of economic forces and the reconfiguration of political power. This is where arts, cartoons, and artworks play an important role to assist other tools in education to prepare our children and our community in general towards the sense of responsibility within the hearts of individuals. After going through the artworks of our respectable ASEAN cartoonists in the virtual exhibition, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to go through it before anybody else, thanks to Zuna, I found that cartoons can and will be an essential tool to cultivate the spirit of democracy. I still remember the days where I pick up many of political ideologies and arguments, especially those from the leftists, from many comics and books with cartoons and pictures on it, which I found in the library, and those given to us by the activists of PSRM then, those in the 80s. Today, I think my kids are more fortunate than I was. A lot of similar artworks, comic books, and ideologically and politically educating cartoons can be found easily through the net, especially those that have been gone viral on social media, especially Zunars. I'm aware of the ill effects of social media and its potential in creating echo chambers, which is a digital type of homogeneous community. I'm not sure whether because of that, Edin trying to get away from social media, I said that he's not a big fan of social media. But still, social media also provides us with opportunities to develop, mature, and responsible global citizens. Used effectively, social media can provide our students with opportunities to come out from their comfort zones, to understand different cultures, races, languages, and religions of their fellow ASEANs, and to spread the awareness about freedom, human rights, and democracy. I'm sure that if Adorno, in fact, Immanuel Kant too, if alive today, they too would have been active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for the sole purpose of imbibing maturity and responsibility amongst our youth. By sharing those excellent pieces exhibited in this event by our cartoonists and artists. When we combine the ideals of maturity and responsibility from Adorno and Habermas that I brought earlier, we have before us a framework to develop students and societies that can appreciate and manifest harmony. This is where I trust artists, arts, cartoonists, and cartoons could play their part too. However, to achieve the ideals of maturity and responsibility, it has to start from developing a lifestyle of reading, of loving of arts and cultures, of giving premium to knowledge, and being driven by the continuous will to know and to find out and to come closer and closer towards the higher truths of life. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel once said, "The ignorant man is not free, because what confronts him is an alien world. The impulse of curiosity, the pressure for knowledge from the lowest level up to the highest rung of philosophical insight arises only from the struggle to cancel this situation of unfreedom and to make world one's own in one's ideas and thought. With arts, cultures, maturity, responsibility, and cartoons, of course, and with minds that are ready for the future, I trust, I strongly believe we can build a better tomorrow. With this, I'm officially launching the Craftora Human Rights in ASEAN, the Cartoonist Perspective exhibition. Thank you very much, Phil Duncan.
So thank you, sir. It was indeed an honor for us to have you speak and officiate our event for today. Thank you so much for that. So we are actually ending our first session for today. And as mentioned previously, we will have a 5-minute break and we'll continue with our second session at approximately 3:15 or slightly before that. And in our second session, we will have post questions to our 4 speakers. And guess what, speakers? I think we touched a lot of nerves or touched a lot of hearts, whichever it is. This is a first for us, actually. We've already got questions in our FB chat. So our FB audiences, hold on to your questions and keep posting them, please. We will come back and address your questions with our speakers in 5 minutes. So, go ahead and have a break. We'll come back in exactly 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, once again, everyone, I would like to emphasize that please, our audiences in FB and everyone else, please do continue to post questions in the FB chat box for our team to actually, pick up and then post to our speakers. It would be really good for anyone to actually post more and more questions so that we can have a really good second session as well. So please do continue your questions. We've already got quite a few, but please continue putting in more questions here. So we still have 1 or 2 minutes left. So please do continue posting the questions. And even when we start back again, if you still have questions, don't stop. Continue posting it as our team, we have a back-end team that's actually picking up those questions. Even when we have gone live, asking other questions, your questions will still be picked up by our team. So please do continue putting them on. Okay, I'm just gonna wait for another 1 to 2 minutes for our speakers, for our 4 speakers to come back on. Yeah, then we will actually be able to start the session, our second session. Oh yeah, as well, please do join us again on for our month-long exhibition. It has started on the 1st of July 2021 and it will go on until 31st July 2021. Please go to our www.craftora.com. You can also join it via our media partners, www.thevibes.com, www.prachatai.com, and also www. What was the other one? So sorry, my mind has slipped a little bit. Okay. www.tempo.co. So these are all the venues that you can actually go into to actually view the Digital Month exhibition. There are 38 cartoonists on exhibition with over 80 magnificent cartoon artworks. So please do join us. It's open. You can join at any time because it's a digital exhibition. So please do join us and come in and view all the artworks. Okay, let me just check in with our speakers for the day. Okay, just another 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. Hi, Mr. Moritz, welcome back. Hi, Dr. Mazli, welcome back. Okay, as I mentioned, We've already got questions flooding our FB, so I think everyone touched something in our audiences, and that's always good to an MC, because then she or he doesn't have to crack their heads for questions to ask our speakers. I have my work all done for me. So let's just go straight into it, because our very first question is a bit long. So I'm just gonna start reading it through. So welcome back everyone to the launching of our Human Rights in ASEAN, the Cartoonists Perspective digital exhibition, which is organized by the Frederick Naumann Foundation for Freedom, Huja Ehsan and Zuna, and our media partners, The Vibe, Tempo and Prachatai. The digital exhibition will be on from 1st to 31st July 2021. You can join us via www.craftora.com, www.thevibes.com, www.tempo.co, and www.prachatai.com. In the second session of our launch event, we are extremely fortunate to still have our 4 highly esteemed speakers with us. For audiences, as mentioned previously, please do continue posting any burning questions that you might have in the FB chat box, and our team will pick up the questions to pose to our 4 esteemed speakers. Right, let me start off this session with the very first one that came in actually, from Mr. Chuk Min. Okay, as I mentioned, this is a bit long, so bear with me a little bit. He says, so I have this hypothesis that the language that we are exposed more in our social or physical environment shapes one's personality, worldviews, and life philosophy. As an example, Chinese in Malaysia who are from a more Mandarin exposed background will have most of the media that's exposed to them are either from other countries with Mandarin speakers, such as China and Taiwan, and from our traditional cultural roots. China is more towards conformity, hence we can see the media that's exposed to them is considered the norm to their liking. Work harder than ever, strive for excellent results since young to have a stable and more secure future with jobs like doctors, engineers, and so on, making many avoid occupations such as cartoonists, animators, musicians, i.e. more towards the creative industry, making it harder to be expressive towards certain issues. While if we take into comparison the Western media that are more targeted towards English speakers, hence media from English-speaking countries, USA, Canada, UK, they are more towards openness and liberalism. This will encourage them to make art, music that are more expressive. We can see many of their movements that express their frustrations with the government and such. While in Malaysia, we are prone to be more towards conformity rather than openness. So to put in perspective, when an individual who wants to bring change in Malaysia through any art media, issues such as censorship and authorities comes into play. My genuine question is, how can Malaysians make any statement when we see so many unpolished talents that are being arrested and shunned away when we bring up topics that are considered taboo? Where and how can we make a statement with expressive art and ensure that we won't be eating dirt trying to make ends meet if the public in Malaysia are more conservative and dislike something that is different? So maybe I would want to pose this question to Zuna, because Zuna did share his life story as why he became a cartoonist, and how he fought against some of the challenges. So maybe Zuna, your perspective on this question from our FB audience.
First of all, the question is very broad. Can you make it simple? I'm sometimes
okay. I think the question that is posed by this particular author is that he says that how can Malaysians make statements when they keep seeing a lot of talents being arrested for expressing themselves? How do we keep brave to do and address all the issues? So that's why I wanted to go to you first, because you faced that question and you went back to certain things within yourself. So maybe you can shed a bit more light for those people out there who have the talent but perhaps are stopped by certain things.
Yeah, I think first of all, this question is more to the government. Yeah, actually, the policy maker or the ex-minister here who can. I mean, they are talking about the statement from the state. I mean, what type of freedom, or what type of culture we are telling peoples of Malaysia? Yeah. Other country, we know that you give you freedom to draw cartoons. You draw, you express your view, and we we may not agree, but we respect your view. So that's very clear in some Europe countries. Even though the reality is may not 100% exactly like that, but that is the statement. You know, but here is very confusing because it's not people talk about freedom. Every government talk about you are free to express. In our national constitution also make it clear that every citizen have a free to express their view. But again, it's when come to issues when come to practice, it's not like that. So this is the confusion statement, and also we are also question. I like to question about who decide all this. Is it the government who have a power to decide, or those who control the religions, or those who have a power in religions, or those who really thinks this is not acceptable by Eastern value, this kind of things. It's very confusion for the government. I think I agree that government have to come up with this, make it clear to the people. Whereas only that, then others will the artists will, the art world in Malaysia will flourish. People will come and do all type of art because people understand this. You can do this, you can express your view. But here you can express your view except, but even the accepting is nobody know what is meant by accept. What issue that you cannot touch. Yesterday, there are one cartoonist were arrested. Been investigated, and also with filmmaker because of doing a cartoon. It's about police torture. Is that taboo? You can't tell about the police torture. Nobody knows. Last year, one artist did a cartoon about national crest. Also cannot do, and it was, I think, investigated for that. So nobody know what does and what don't, in Malaysia. So I think this is the problem artists have to face. The only way artists the only way artists and cartoonists want to know the clear answer is to try to challenge it. Yeah, can do it or not? Yeah, we do, and we know. That's the only thing. It is a very sad that we have to face this. I think those who are in power, who have a control. I would like to pose up this question again. By this question also to Mazli, yeah, I want to add up it. If now they are talk about there are some government change or what, they talk about it. Let's say you are going to be minister again. Just an example. What statement you are going to make about this?
Yeah, thank you, Zuna. I was going to pose this question to Dr. Mazli as well, because I think he comes from this unique perspective that you were previously the Minister of Education. So you were on the government side of things. Now you're not. Yeah. So you're on the other side of things. So you now have like what I would call the two perspective, the two perspective areas. So what do you think? How do we go about something like this?
Yeah, Rajida, I think most of those charges that been put against Zuna were political in nature. If you notice, those charges were put against him before Pakatan Harapan. During Pakatan Harapan, even he depicted me in some of his artworks in a very nasty way, but I didn't say nothing, and I'm still communicating with him. That shows how we respect the freedom of speech during our time.
Zuna's drinking.
Not only that, he also
him.
depicted the former prime minister many times, and no action been taken against Zuna, and that shows that how it should be the way forward. And now, why it became very chaotic again? All this arrest against Fahmi Reza, the recent one, and soon maybe on Zuna and others, if the government is still there, because they're misusing or they're abusing the power. That's all. I mean, it's political in nature. It's political in nature. And despite our 22 months of administration of this country, but I think Zuna, as a cartoonist, you could feel the difference then even. And hopefully if we come back to government, we could bring um, a new environment, a new culture, a new fresh air to cartoons.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mazli.
Uh,
But for me, what concerned me most
Yeah.
is to bring all these arts and cultures to schools more than anything else.
Totally
So
understand.
I that Hidayah.
Mm.
Okay, I would like to pose a question to both of you, yeah, Edin and based on this. The problem based on that question from the audience is she or he concerned about the racial, problem
Ah,
in Malaysia is more than it's look like, if I understood the comment clearly, that there are some race cannot comment about this, some race can against, this is also the failure of national unity or what, I don't know, but I think you should address also this question. Thank you.
Okay, what do you think, Edin, of
Yeah.
Zuna's, Zuna's comment? Anything that you might want to add to that?
No, I want to address the first question
Yeah, sure.
and then follow on with talking about, maybe I'll start off by addressing Zuna's question. I think we need to be very confident, always be very vigilant. We have to be very vigilant because our social makeup is such that it can rupture and fracture very easily. But we also have to be very, very aware that the level of maturity of this society sometimes, by the very fact that we have been propelled against our own wishes to maturing in terms of our relationships with each other, has happened very rapidly in the past 10 years. Now, let us not forget that we have, in the past 10 years, come from a landscape in which cows' heads have been dragged on the streets, churches have had Molotov cocktails thrown in, and we have not seen a breakdown in social structures. In fact, we have seen a population that has seen the hands behind all of these people and chose to eject this kind of politics in 2019. My great reservation with the administration that succeeded the pre-2018 government was they didn't seem to have the confidence in their very own people to push a lot of reforms through. For example, we are presently sitting with the best education minister we didn't allow ourselves to have. Right? We didn't. And I'm not saying this because he's my friend or whatever, but this was one Minister of Education who was really humanities driven in his approach to education and not encouraging a culture of paper chasing and exam molds. That's a very radical position to take after about 40 years. Yeah. Now, the question is, I think, so our society is always fragile, yes, but we've also come a long way. And in some ways, I always call the world of social media dunia lanon, is a world of piracy. And to be able to operate in your dunia lanon, in this world of piracy, you have to develop some kind of resistance or some kind of kekebalan, immunity to the kind of garbage that comes your way. So while I'm always vigilant about what is being said, I'm also quite confident that a lot of people have actually transcended this easy attempt to inflame ethnic divisions and so on. And I think this is also why I find a lot of our politicians who are rooted in the political processes of the past are beginning to see themselves becoming extremely powerless. And that is why they are reacting in the ways that they are reacting, sometimes insanely so. Having said all that, I think the first question is a very important one. And I think one of the things I need to interject in here is there is an element of in that question that tend to idealizes developments in the West over the past 50 years. Always remember that the West's openness or seeming culture of openness has only occurred over the past 70 years. It wasn't right up to the 1920s and 1930s in places like Italy and Germany. We know what happened. So this and right up to the 1960s in the United States, we know what race relations were like, and up till now. So let's not be deceived that somehow that democratic institutions in the West, no doubt, there is a culture of institutional democracy that needs to be aspired to, but there are a hell of a lot of other things that need to be resolved in the West. And cultural development is an organism. Yeah, it's a whole cycle. So what may have seemed to be freedoms, very clearly accepted freedoms 30 or 40 years ago in the West, are not freedoms anymore. And so today the West is grappling with really inane things like cancel culture and no platforming, and a whole touch me not psyche among a new generation of people. I think if you look, I think Europe has a real problem with Islam, and European Muslims have a real problem with Europe. So these issues are very explosive. And if we look at a particular trend, we see that it's the gestation period for freedoms in the West is becoming increasingly challenged. That's not a Western problem or an Eastern problem, it's a world problem. Yeah, I think one of the very important things for us to constantly have our hand on is on the pulse of history. We must be very aware of how we have evolved as societies, yeah, so that we have a very clear idea of how complicated and how difficult questions of freedom, of culture, of interaction, of education, of worldliness are to be grappled with. I think we in Southeast Asia, as a result of our own struggles for power, have really chosen to suppress and not remember many things in our culture that provide for openness and a cosmopolitan approach to things. We in Southeast Asia in particular, we come from a bastard culture, a culture of wildness, culture of deep mixes, a culture in which we have flown into each other from time immemorial. There is no beginning point. There's no pure beginning point for the history of Southeast Asia. It is a region that is born out of the clash of cultures, the adoption of cultures, the streaming of cultures. And so these things need to be struggled for more than anything else now. As I said earlier, to all my friends in Southeast Asia here, when you speak as a political cartoonist and often seen as a Western tool medium, always please remind your audience that the tradition you bring is a tradition that has been with us for hundreds and hundreds of years, and you are really speaking out of that channel. And in Kelantan they call it moyang, that ancestry of how you deal and approximate yourself with power. That's a very, very important question, because the true flowering of democracy begins when you begin to understand what your relationship with established power is.
Yep, totally get it. Maybe I could actually address the same question to Mr. Moritz, and I want to tag on another question from Mr. Mutu Ramia in Bangsa to Mr. Moritz as well. Mr. Mutu is actually asking, so what is the major difference between how the government in Germany or Europe treat cartoonists compared to the governments in ASEAN? Mr. Moritz?
Yeah, thank you very much. Back to the first question first, I have a problem with the distinctions that were being made, branding West as being liberal and conducive to arts, whereas Malaysia was portrayed as a conservative country, and Chinese stand for conformity. I think in everywhere you find conservative people and liberal people in every society, regardless of nations, regardless of ethnicities, and it is a degree of freedom that dictates the degree to which arts can flourish as well. I mean, it's no coincidence that we do not have cartoonists from from Vietnam or from Laos or from Brunei, but I'm sure there are some people there who do wish they would be free and would like to express themselves. So I think it's in every society. And then we had the term Asian values earlier on, which was rejected, which I totally agree with. I mean, you look at the way Indonesia developed into a free country after Suharto. You look up north in Asia to Korea, to Japan, to Taiwan. You have democracies that are just as mature as those in Western Europe. And it was also said very, and it's very right. If you look at Malaysia 10 years ago, and the degree of freedom of expression has, of course, changed with 2018. At the same time, what Zuna says is worrying. There seem to be some red lines still, and nobody knows what they are. So when I hear about a cartoonist being investigated for addressing police torture, I wonder why the National Commission on Human Rights can address the issue in their annual publication, and a cartoonist cannot. So it is a bit strange. It is not strange to be curtailed when you're doing cartoons about corruption and the guy you're criticizing is in government. And that is political, as Damlazi says. But now going to Europe and your second question, I mean, we have a mix, and the word responsibility came up a lot today. Adorno, freedom comes with responsibility. And there are certainly limits also to freedom of expression, and there are limits for cartoonists as well. In Germany, for example, we have laws that you cannot use any Nazi symbols, you cannot incite violence. Even in societies that put a great value on freedom of expressions, there are boundaries, and I'd say that's the job of a government is to, on the one hand, ensure freedom of expression is protected, but at the same time, nobody incites violence in any way, shape, or form. So it's a mix, even in Germany.
Okay, I think I get the general gist of our feedback to the question is that actually, regardless of country, of nations, there's going to be a bit of everything everywhere, and I suppose it is how each country, each nation actually tackles and corrects the imbalances in those things. I think is one of the key factors, I suppose. So Zuna, I think this question might come to you. Is that it's from Apple Raimundo, interesting name. Why cartooning for this exhibit? How is cartooning different from other forms of art and media?
Why again the question? I don't get.
Apple Raimundo asks, why cartooning for this exhibit? How is cartooning different from other forms of art and media?
Yes. Okay, why cartoons? It's not cartooning. So why cartoons is used as a medium to exhibit human rights issue in this exhibition. Yeah. Okay, cartoons have advantage compared to other medium. I'm not saying other medium is not important, but I can say now, I can say very clear now that cartoons has become a most powerful communication media in the world now, for few reasons. But that is why their cartoonists being murdered, their cartoonists go to jail more than others, other artists nowadays. Yeah, nowadays, and and this is why also before I go to why they has more advantage compared to others, this is why also I will hope that the government, future government or government in Malaysia will use cartoon more for education. I'm not talking formal education alone. Education, informal education. As an example, in Japan, in Tokyo, they use very widely, they use cartoon to educate people how to recycle trash, as example. Use cartoon very effectively. So we have to use this. Okay, I would like to say cartoon. First of all, cartoon, you know, people live in very, nowadays people are very depressed everywhere, especially during pandemic, especially during lockdown. And outside of this also, people have so many mental problem nowadays. So cartoons come with a joke, with something funny, that a bit gives something for them to laugh, you know. So it provide comedy, it provide funny things, which is, so people love to laugh very much nowadays. And second thing, the message is very quick. The message you can get 10 seconds, or you know, at least 1 minute you can get it, compared to if you read the same issue written by, you know, in the article. So you have this kind of people now don't have time. And majority of people in the world nowadays, they don't read, but except Dr. Mazli and so who has lived in the or left in this panel is me, right? You know, so people, it's really, people don't read. People don't read. It's over the world phenomena. People don't really read. People like to, you know, look at the visual thing. So that is important for the cartoonist. And then also it is very universal. That's why we can have this exhibition now from 5 ASEAN countries, because it's universal. So I can understand cartoon from Myanmar, I can understand cartoon that produced in Indonesia, I can understand cartoon that produced in German, in Paris. So it's have universal value. And second thing, and other thing is, it also can transcend between ages and social class. You know, some youngsters also now they love cartoon, and one of the reasons the government banned my book, because they worry this my cartoon can change the perspective of youngsters, you know, to the Malaysian political scenario. So and also those who are illiterate, they still can understand cartoon. So those who live in kampung or in urban area, they still can understand this, and rural area. And the other thing is, it is a very graphical. So people tend to, you know, in our mind as a, you know, I study science, so I don't take art at all. For me, I'm always science. You know, our mind is this is we can really remember pictorial and visual compared to when we read. That's, I think this is common for people. So I think this is why it become, this is more effective to use cartoon to tell the people this is the situation of human rights in ASEAN country. So people will feel that more comfortable to read through cartoon rather than to read a serious article, which is serious. I'm not saying that they are not good. Serious article is very important, but again, cartoon can make it more comfortable, you know, for people to read it and laugh at the same time. That's the reason why.
Understand. Thank you, Zuna. I have another question here, and this time it's for Dr. Mazli. It's from Aisha Kamenbak. She asked, why do you think now culture and diversity are not celebrated in Malaysian education? What do you think happened in between to make this situation happen? Dr. Mazli?
To be honest, it has happened during my tenure in the ministry, and we tried to introduce it to schools, and we were preparing a new model. I mean, what we call it as new education model that was supposed to be by 20. And we have a new government, and this government minister for clueless, and we don't know what in his mind. Not only him, but also the government, where they want to take this whole asked me that question at the moment, I just couldn't answer it on behalf of them. You need to ask them. But
Okay.
what they have in their mind and
Mhm.
what is their plan post-pandemic? Because I keep asking that question during the parliament sessions last year, but now since the government, the parliament is still closed, I couldn't ask them. But I will bring this question if they are still in power.
Okay.
I hope I did answer the question.
I think it does, and I hope that Aisha has actually gotten a little bit of insight into why perhaps culture and diversity is not celebrated in Malaysian education. I've actually got another question now, and it's actually for actually Zuna again. Um, it actually asks, it's also from Aisha coming back. She says, "What's your message to the current politicians?"
Yeah, current politician is it is a very broad group. You will say current politician or current government. Yeah,
Hmm.
I really but I can say this. I really annoy when I see people say that I don't like politician, especially youngsters, and they keep saying that politician all bad, politician all corrupt. I really don't like this word. I'm not that type of person. I believe that actually we we have a good politician and bad politician. It's very simple. You take out, you throw out the bad one, and and we need politician. Many youngsters say we don't need politician. They are a group of, no, we need politician because politician is the one who will manage our country, and the important is to need for us to choose a good one who can act on behalf of us. So don't generalize, say that all politicians is bad, all is bad. No. So I cannot give a comment. I cannot give a message to them. But those who are in power, I can give message. It's a very simple message to those in power. You we voted you, so you have to really work for us. So we are the rakyat are the masters. So keep remember that. So if you ignore the rakyat, sooner or later you have to go. And not sooner or later, sooner you have to go. Maybe very soon you have to go maybe. But again, this is what happening. This is again, many people think that when you are popular, you can be in power. So this is wrong. Only those leaders, those are natural leaders, should be in power. So I was offered to contest in previous general election, which is I said no, sorry, no, I'm not a leader. I'm a cartoonist. So even though I can win, maybe I can win because maybe I have names, I can win. But that's wrong. This is the wrong concept to be a politician. I said no. I will do cartoon. Let politicians do their work, and we move together in the same direction.
Okay, that's some pretty sound advice actually. I have one question, and I think maybe I'd like to put this to Edin. Edin, we have a question from Miss Nurul Natasha Idham from Sintok Kedah. She actually asks, can we draw cartoons or make fun about religion?
Yeah, that's a very, very tough one.
Yeah.
Well, okay. We had the issue of the Danish cartoons several years ago. And I was very encouraged by the stance of many, many leading Muslim voices and figures from people like Tariq Ramadan. I think, I'm not sure if Dr. Mazdi commented on this, but many, many other leading Islamic scholars who basically said, there must be confidence in your faith. And there must be confidence in your faith, and you must have the tenacity to walk away from something that offends you. Because the alternative, that is to take a very reactionary approach to questions of this kind, is the fact that there will be a clampdown on freedoms everywhere. Yeah. and we cannot afford that. The more I think, I mean, I look at other religions, and I am very, very, very worried about this trend among all faiths, really. If you look at what is happening in India today, you know, an entire past is being obliterated, you know, reconstructed and reinvented, that wants to essentially do away with Mughal or Muslim India, you know, that essentially was one of the main platforms upon which the India that we know of today was constructed, an India of worldliness and cosmopolitan cultures. I look at Christianity, which has had a tradition, for example, of great satire. Anyone who's seen The Life of Brian, the film The Life of Brian by Monty Python, would know, you know, how Christianity has been dragged through the satire mill. But we see a lot more of reactionary feeling these days. I think that's very dangerous, because any kind of reactionary feeling is rooted in fear and a degree of shallowness. Yeah, I think if you are very, very rooted in your belief system and in your worldview, and not just in the practice of it, but in the thinking of it. I like to remind my friends in the Muslim world that, you know, before there was the satanic verses and whatever not, there was within the tradition of Islam itself a whole tradition of satire and lampooning and caricatures of everything from Puritanism to sanctimoniousness to hypocrisy, you know, that has been there. Cartoons, for example, in the Muslim world have been extant and around since the 11th and 12th century, yeah, and most of the time in not very kind ways to especially hypocritical religious people. So this is the kind of forgetfulness that I'm talking about in our parts. We tend to think of these things as alien to our cultures, yeah, and somehow Western or something. But we were doing these things when the West was still in what we call the Dark Ages, you know. I think we need to go back and we need to remember, and we have to establish some kind of continuity with all aspects of our past, not only the past we agree with or disagree with, but all aspects of our past. I think the Muslim example is very, very important because we are constantly reminded about the golden age of Islam in Andalus. I would like to interject here also, please don't forget India at the same time. Yeah, India was the landscape upon which what we today understand as comparative religion was forged in the court of Akbar. Yeah, Muslim Spain too. But always remember, those things cannot be merely historical references to prop up our sense of openness. We have to learn from the examples of those things. Yeah. And it wasn't just deep philosophy and a deep thought that was established in Islamic Spain, which then created the foundations for the Western Enlightenment. The translation of Aristotle and people like that can be traced back to Muslim Spain. But today they have to be living examples of how we can live and how we can thrive and how we can exchange and how we can interact. They have to be living examples. We cannot, on the one hand, glorify those ages and then choose to live in very insulated spaces. That's so. If you ask me, you know, whether we like it or not, people will draw lampoons of our faith. They will come up with, if you consider it a provocation, they will be emotional and philosophical stuff, philosophically, and that's what we need to do.
I think I know where you're coming from, and I totally agree with that. In that, and I might actually put my head on the chopping block for this. Is that I think more often than not, everyone has a tendency to actually look at history and say, "Hey, look, this is what we were able to do. This is what we were. This is what we was. The glory days and all that." But more often than not, it stays as that. It stays as people saying these were our glory days. But I very rarely hear or see people actually saying, "Hey, these were our glory days, let's make it happen again. I don't see that much nowadays. And we actually have like about another 5 minutes to our session. We're supposed to end at 4. I'm going to throw in one question, which might probably get me into trouble with all 4 of you. But this is just something that I've always had thoughts about it, but I never know whether this is something that not just Malaysia per se, but everywhere around the world. We always see that it's always 2 political parties fighting each other for to be a government and be in power. But you always see, and it's not just Malaysia, it's everywhere around the world, that good leaders can come from both sides, like what Zuna was saying. It's not that you don't need politicians, you actually need good leaders, and good leaders can come from anywhere. So I'm just wondering, and I'd like to get the views of our 4 speakers. Do you think the world can ever come to a state where we will have a government anywhere around the world that's actually made up not of political parties per se, but they are made up of good leaders, regardless of parties? Do you think that is something that a dream, or is that a dream of mine, or can I possibly live to see that day? Maybe to Mr. Moritz first. Am I making sense?
Oh boy, what a question.
I think I'm going to be really quiet after this.
You're talking to somebody who is a member of a political party and works for a foundation affiliated to a political party.
Yeah,
so you can guess how I'll answer. I think political parties are extremely important to the democratic fabric of any democratic society. And democracy really starts within a party, the democratic process within a party, and the freedom of expression and criticizing each other and fighting over words and paragraphs. And I was very happy to hear what Zuna was saying, that there's good politicians and there's bad politicians, just like everywhere. But the ones I know, I'm not a politician, but I'm a great admirer of them. Regardless of where they end up, whether in senior positions or not, most of them have started by trying to make their neighborhoods better, campaigning for something. Politics starts at a young age, usually, and for people who get engaged locally. And then some make careers out of it and aspire to be ministers, or in doing so, get criticized all the time by media, by cartoonists, and the politicians I really like, I admire greatly, because they put trying to make the country better at the center of what they do, and it's more than a job to them. So sometimes I feel sorry for them when they get criticized, and so I'm a fan of political parties. And one particular one, the one I belong to, we have an election coming up in Germany. But again, you can't say per se that parties are bad or politicians are bad. I'm with Zuna there. You have good ones and bad ones, but the structure to have parties as a vehicle is important, because parties should stand for something. There are liberal parties, there are conservative parties, there are green parties. And then people have the right to choose which party they join and which party they vote into government or vote out. So generally, I like the system. I like the system of accountability and democracy. I mean, go back to the words. Demos is the people, and cracy is the power. So in the end of the day, the voter, the people have the power, and that's what's great about democracy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moritz. Dr. Mazli, what do you think of my question? A pipe dream, or something that we might see in the future, where we get good leaders to actually be part of the government, instead of, will we ever reach that stage where, we will have all the good leaders up front?
Again, I have to
regardless
agree
of
with
parties.
with Maurice. Yes, it depends on uh, the, the political system of the country that you're talking about. For example, if I mean, if you go to a country like Saudi Arabia, definitely there's no political parties over there, and the king will never be elected. But you know, they have their own dynamism in politics. Vatican City, it has no political parties, and you have the Pope, and you have its own political structure over there. Maybe Tibet and other countries. It depends on the system that they're practicing. And at the moment, I think I'm a partyless MP at the moment. I don't belong to any political party, although I'm part of Pakatan Harapan, and that doesn't qualify me to be 100% independent. I'm still part of Pakatan Harapan. But again, I mean, it depends on the political system and the political structure of the country. But there would be an ideal situation in a Republican system in which the president will be directly elected by the people that you might imagining an independent candidate could win the election without party, just like the Netflix drama series Designated Survivor, but that only exists in fiction, that only exists in movie. It won't happen in the real world, because to campaign you need money. I mean, and out of it. I mean, yeah.
For me, I think
But that must not stop you from having a dream.
It's something that I've always thought about. That I would love to see that happening one day. And Zuna, you were saying something?
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with this. It is important. Political party is important infrastructure to get in power. There is nothing wrong with that. But the important thing is, after winning, you serve your own party. Do you serve those who vote for you, or you serve the nation? That is the most important question. So if you have some what happened in Malaysia, you win, then you only care for your party or the follower of your party. So
and
that's
your funder.
Yeah.
And your funder.
And the funders. So it's not to the people. So again, for me, it's very, very important to have that, because again, if you don't have political party, the example we have is abuse of power is everywhere. You don't have that, monarchy, or you have whatever, then you know what is going to happen. So it is very, very important political party exists in this system, in the structure of democracy. And I think that's very important. And the difference where it's made is after winning.
Oh, there's another example. There's another example.
Wow, I think I've opened up
leaders
a
coming to power without political parties or without election. There's going to be a junta regime, which the last thing we would want. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, that's worrying. So, Mr. Edin,
Yes,
my last panelist to comment on my dream.
Yeah, I've really got to interject in this one, because it's a gem.
I think I stirred up a hornet's nest here.
When I was 18 years old, I was so captivated by a very thin man with very curly hair who was playing a guitar, and he sang these wonderful lines, and they said, "Don't follow leaders and watch your parking meters." And that man was Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan,
And ever since then, my approach to politics has been, I am an anarchist. I don't believe in government, in my head at least, because that helps me to establish a relationship with power, which is maybe a negative one. It's a negative approach to power, but I agree. I remember the Mexican poet Octavio Paz, he said, it's impossible to ignore politics. It's like spitting in the sky, spitting on your own face, right? But I think we need a whole perception shift with things. Sometimes a lot of the systems we inherit don't work. And so I think we need to have enough inventiveness and imagination to look at how our inherited systems can be worked on so that they can be developed for our advantage. That's number one. The second thing is I need to zero in on the word that you use. I think we have to think less about leaders, and we really have to think more about people's representatives.
Okay.
The word leadership and leaders comes with all kinds of power imaginings for these people. They get so caught up in the ego because everybody's like leadering them. And I think that needs to change. The third thing I want to stress on, and I want to involve Dr. Mazli here, because he's among. We constantly talk about the young. We constantly talk about the hope of the nation for the young, and I am very impressed by many young politicians. But I'm impressed with them in their individual capacities. I'm less impressed with them once they talk out of party structures, and then, all the feudalism that we talk about is set forth. And there they are saying, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, to whoever their political leaders are. So I think the young here in this country need to decide what their political ambitions are, actually. I have one political ambition. I want to be mayor of Kuala Lumpur when they have mayoral elections. But I would like to see and get to know what Dr. Mazli's plans are for the next 10 years, because I think he'd make a great prime minister. Anybody who talks about Habermas, is a good prime minister for me. But we don't actually know what his ambitions are. And I can say the same with a lot of young, promising politicians who are still there, essentially carrying the bags of their very old now and very archaic political leaders, right? So I think we need to be able to say a lot more. I think people need to be less coy about where they want to be in 5 and 10 years, so that the country can also decide where it wants to be in 5 and 10 years. Yeah, so we have to get serious about our politics. We have a shambolic government today, and the result, the government is shambolic, is because the system is in a mess, and we really need some reinvention, reimagination, and rethinking about how these systems can actually work for us rather than the benefit of individual political leaders.
I think maybe I'm going to rephrase my questions to maybe not that good leaders should be there up front. We need good people up there up front, so that when people are reduced to being people, they start remembering that there are other people who brought them up. There are other people that they need in order to progress, move, make changes. So yeah, I'm going to change it. Will we ever see a day where good people are there to make changes rather than good leaders? Good one, Edin. Dr. Mazli, since Edin mentioned your name, maybe I could end the session with so sir, what's
Should
your
I
next
answer
10
that?
years?
Should I answer that question? That's out of the topic. We're talking about
Yeah,
cartoons
I
and human
know.
rights. You're asking me about my 10 years plan. To be honest, I'm still struggling to convince myself that I'm now a politician. I'm, coming from a background of academia and social activist. I only want to get things done. I only want the best for the country. But at the moment, I think my passion is more towards education. In the next 10 years, what I would like to see is to have Malaysia as good as Germany in Tibet, as good as Finland when it comes to teaching, as good as Japan when it comes to values and discipline, as good as France when it comes to culture, and as good as, any other developed nations that people look up to their education. I want Malaysia to be looked up by others in the next 10 years. And I think that is possible. And that's my only passion, and that's my only dream. I don't have a big dream. And I think if you ask me after 10 years, if we could achieve that, I would like to go back to academia. I love teaching.
Coming from a former educator, I wish that could happen, and I know a lot of my other friends who are still teaching wish that too. So for the youngsters out there and all that. So, education in Malaysia has always been something great to me, but it can be greater. And, I hope that I live to see the day that Malaysia's right up there when you talk about education. So we once were, I think I have heard Malaysian education being mentioned somewhere at the top, but I think we have slipped a little bit. And I think it's time, if we have good people where they should be, we can actually aspire to get there. And I've seen some of those good people around, and 4 of them are on the panel with me today. And I'm extremely honored for that. And I think on that very high note of, getting where we want to be, Malaysia at the top for a lot of things, and also for everyone around the world to actually see that we need good people everywhere. I'd like to thank all my 4 speakers. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Dr. Mazli, for launching us. Thank you, Mr. Moritz and Edin, for being our media partners and our funders and organizers for this program. Thank you, Zuna, for getting me onto the team for such a great event. So thank you, everyone that participated in this launch today. We've had some fantastic questions from you guys, and that actually spurred our forum for today. Our Q&A session has been one of the best. I think Zuna will nod his head and say it was. So thank you, everyone, for making our launch today a really fantastic event. So from me and from our team, thank you, everyone, and stay safe, stay well, and we see you soon. Please do remember, our next forum is actually on the 10th of July. Join our exhibition, view all these great artworks so that we can actually make a difference in human rights around the world. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Goodbye from me.